What's up guys, KY, not Kai the Creative, and we have a little bit of a different setup. I think whenever I'm going to talk about gear and equipment, I'm going to use a darker setup. That's beside the point. I have been a Canon shooter for the last year and a little bit. Since this pandemic started, I've actually been using Canon cameras from the Canon EOS R to the R5 and the C70, and all of them are great cameras. However, I've gone back to Sony. And here's why. Now, I'm going to kind of tell you the moral of this story in the beginning rather than the end. Use the tools that fit the needs of your job, even if the needs change as you progress through your career. Now, I had purchased the Canon system pretty much out of desperation. What ended up happening is when I was using my first two camera setup, which was the Sony A7 III and the Sony A7 R3. Now, if you've had experience with these cameras or this particular fault that happened with those cameras back then, the audio jacks are a little bit flimsy. Now, they both went down on me at the exact same time, which was weeks before the pandemic happened and the lockdown happened. So I had sent my cameras back to Sony to go get fixed. Both cameras were gone and everything was closed. So I actually couldn't get my cameras back in any reasonable amount of time. Now, what ended up happening was I had a gig that was offered to me during the pandemic that I was able to work from home and I was able to do things safely. And basically I had no camera. And I ended up picking up the Pocket 4K. That was the only thing I could afford at the time, with the adapter from the Micro Four Thirds mount to the EF mount. So I was able to use Canon lenses on the Pocket 4K for the project that I needed to do. What ended up happening is that because I had the Pocket 4K and I had a bunch of Canon lenses now, I needed a Canon camera, especially if I wanted to do photography, which is honestly half of the business that I do anyways. So I ended up picking up the EOS R. At the time, the R5 and the R6 were never released, so I picked up the EOS R because I figured that would be a really good time for me to get into the Canon system. I've heard so much about their colors and their photography, so I decided that I was going to pick one up. Now, from using the Pocket 4K and the Canon EOS R for quite some time, I ended up deciding, you know what, I want to go into a full-fledged, larger cinema camera with ND filters that were built in, a raw output like the Canon Raw Light, so I decided to go with the Canon C200, and it proved to be an excellent camera. I've released a lot of content about the Canon C200 and a lot of videos using the Canon C200, and it was an awesome camera. And still, if you're looking for a aftermarket camera that's really, really good, great raw output, and a lot of features that you want from a professional camera, I still think the Canon C200, even in 2021, is an excellent choice. Now, I also had switched my Canon EOS R to the Canon R5, a camera I've never actually talked about on this channel. I've actually never really talked about it at all. I figured there was a lot of Canon R5 videos, or a lot of things about the overheating and the photography and the video features and getting a new log profile. There was so much content around it that I didn't feel like I could add anything into the conversation, so I never actually made content around it, but I did have the Canon R5 for quite some time. Now, you have two great cameras. You have the Canon C200 and the Canon R5. What ended up happening next? And what ended up happening next is I finally caved after almost a year of not purchasing the Canon C70, and I upgraded from my Canon C200 to the Canon C70. Now, I had this camera for not a very long time. I only maybe had it for about a month and a half, maybe close to 2 months, if that. And the projects that I did were not really related to what I normally do. I usually shoot a lot of fitness stuff, a lot of stuff for supplement companies and things like that, but I never actually got a chance to do that. That was just the nature of my booking schedule. I had a lot of things that were not fitness related, but I had a lot of corporate shoots, some stuff with real estate. Very few things were fitness related, but I was able to use the Canon C70 and put it through some of its paces. I was also using the Canon R5 as a B camera or even a backup camera for certain things, and I found that they didn't match very well, which was a little bit frustrating, but it was something I can deal with. I know how to color grade, I know how to use DaVinci Resolve, it's totally fine, and that was kind of my thought process. But then I started thinking, well, I'm lugging around this giant camera. Its B camera isn't the greatest for matching, and honestly, there were other systems there that I don't even think cost that much more money to just go into anyways. And at the time that I was thinking of this, I may as well make that decision right away before something else comes out from Canon, and then I start regretting the camera, and then I actually can't either get my money back from the store because it's within the return policy, or I can't sell it if I need to go and pick up a different system. Now, I also want to add in that I'm in a network of other content creators around Toronto. There's about 14 to 20 of us. I can't remember the number, but everybody's a Sony shooter except for myself. So when I need to rent out gear or borrow things, it becomes a hassle. Like, I can't rent out lenses. I couldn't rent out bodies as B cameras if I needed them. I was the only person that was using Canon cameras, and I was the only person that had two Canon cameras that shot video. So it was kind of frustrating at that time to be able to find somebody or find somewhere where if I needed gear that was accessible and I didn't have to go to the other side of the city to a rental house, I was able to pick those things up. So this is my thought process. The Canon C70 and the FX6 cost almost identically the same thing when you factor in the adapter that's on the Canon C70. And then I also thought about the Canon R5. For me, for photography, I was able to get away shooting professionally for magazines and companies on this A7R3. So instead, I would rather just downgrade, make a couple $1,000s by getting rid of the R5, and then just exchange directly my Canon C70 to the FX6. That was my thought process. And then I would just change all my Canon lenses over to Sony lenses and their equivalents, and that would pretty much be it. I wouldn't have to worry about anything. I wouldn't lose too much money. I think I actually gained a little bit of money with that plan. Here's the thing. No matter what you do, if you live in Canada or if you live in North America and you're looking for the Sony FX6, it's damn near impossible to find. So I decided to improvise. I was still committed to bringing back the Canon C70 because that was part of my grand master plan to switching back over to Sony, just to give myself a better ecosystem that might be a little bit cheaper. But I had to settle for a camera that was going to give me the same quality and the same specs, or very close to the same specs, something like the Canon C70, without losing too much. Now, that brings me to the Sony FX3, which is a camera that's pretty popular around filmmakers nowadays. There's a lot of really well-known filmmakers that are using the FX3, and outside of losing the ND filters that's built in, I don't necessarily notice too much from a cinema camera perspective. But what I do notice is the impact on my wallet. The Canon C70 is about $3,000 more than the FX3, which afforded me the ability to buy 3 lenses with this camera body and not spend that much extra money. Now you have to buy money for these cards, but that was pretty much it. And when I got rid of the R5, I had went back, I guess, down to the Sony A7R3, and I'd use all my Sony lenses for that. So I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why I like switching back to the Sony system and what my recommendations are for you. If you're here looking for a video talking about S-Cinetone and S-Log and low light performance and doing side-by-side tests, I'm not the person for that, at least not for this video. Something that I like about Sony's system is that it's cheaper than the Canon pound per pound when we're talking about video specs. I'm going to be able to get pound for pound better specs on the Sony system than I am going to be versus Canon and spend less money. What I also like about it a lot is that you only have to worry about one lens mount system. Right now, Canon has an RF lens system and an EF lens system, and I think they have some vintage lenses in the FD. Now, you're going to have adapters for each one of those things. Now, if I want to use all the goodness that's in the RF lenses, I either have to use my Canon R5, which isn't the best video camera compared to the C70, or go Super 35 crop on the C70, which is two situations that I don't really want to do. And at that, even buying the RF lenses themselves is incredibly expensive. And to be completely honest, when things get shared on social media, it's very hard to tell the difference between a G Master lens and its more expensive Canon RF counterpart. Now, the next thing we talk about is the ecosystem. If I want to rent out things or if I want to borrow things, I have friends I can lean on if I need equipment, or I have to hire out operators that also have cameras that are Sony as well. It's a lot easier to do that. I found that with this camera here in particular, I had the epiphany of the FX3 gives me everything I need for my filmmaking kit, especially for some of the small run shoots, some of the small run quicker fitness shoots that I normally end up doing, that this camera gives me more than what I need. Now, if I want to use something like the FX6 or the FX9, which are cameras I know how to use, I don't necessarily have to own those cameras. In my network, I have a bunch of people that have those cameras that are available for rent that I could lean on at any time to rent those cameras if I have the budget for the job that calls for it. It doesn't make a ton of sense for me right now to start buying these $10,000 and $16,000 cameras to have just in case I have a higher paying gig. Now, somewhere down the line, I'm going to pick up the FX9 or the FX6, but right now the FX3 with a lower price tag and the ability to buy more lenses is doing 90% of the jobs that I'm doing currently. A lot of times I used to think that having a bigger camera on set is super important for higher budget gigs, and it is, but everything that's less than that, the best they're going to be able to expect is me bringing something like a rigged out FX3, because if they want something that's going to be shaped that's bigger or something that's more substantial, they're going to have the budgets for it. And to be honest, for my standards, it just isn't the case. And when it is, I could always rent those things out for a couple $100s a day, and I could charge it back to the client, and they can get the big camera experience that they want. I could still save money. So those are some of the things that I was thinking about when switching over to the Sony system. Now, I'm going to say it. There's no giant difference in quality between the Sony FX3 and some of the other cinema cameras that I've been using. All the cameras at this level are actually really good. The second you start spending a decent amount of money on cameras with video features, they're all going to be good. What I recommend for you is to just buy the tools for the job and stop listening to everybody else. Stop listening to your favorite YouTubers that are going to tell you to buy this camera versus this one. There's going to be pros and cons for everybody depending on your situations for each of these particular systems. And from somebody that's used both of them and back again, to be honest, they're all great cameras. I just found that me going to the Sony system right now for my career is my best option if I want to save a bunch of money and still be the filmmaker that I want to be. Whew. All right, so that was pretty much it. This is the video of how I've gone from Sony to Canon to Sony again. I'm super happy I got this video out of the way because I felt like it was a weight on my chest in efforts for me to start releasing a lot more Sony camera content. I really do like the Sony FX3, and to be honest, there's a lot of things I don't miss about the Canon system, but that'll be another video for another time. But I'm really excited to talk about some of the things that I enjoy about the system, and I can't wait to share that with you guys on this channel. If you like the video, make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe, do all of those things, and comment down below what camera system are you using. This is KY Not Kai the Creative, and I'm probably gonna go and watch Dune right about now. Peace.